Okay. Well, Lion, what a great start to the stream. Thank you very much for 10 months. Sincerely appreciate that. So, it's crazy just how much time has passed and how much stuff we've got done in 10 months. But cool. Thank you very much. Good morning. Okay. Oh, man. So, made a bit of progress overnight, made some decisions, changed some things around. So I'm going to jump right into it. Basically, what is currently tenant management, these pieces of tenant management, ultimately these are going to live in control tower. These are tenant management is primarily the responsibility of the backend system to control, right? So subscriptions and things like that are going to live in those backend components. So tenant management as it stands is not the responsibility of Liquid Sky, it's the responsibility of the backend system. The organization management, the thing that the user signs up, is the responsibility of the user. So this does live in here. So rather than creating security, I decided it's time for organization management to appear, because it's more than just security. There's user profile stuff. There's settings and configurations and stuff that should be stored as part of the organization and stored and managed by the user. So I decided organization management should appear. This is probably going to be one of the biggest pieces. Rumbling Geek, good afternoon. So I created organization management, and I created a set user permission. And I'm going to store the user permission here, and I call it user permission. I got away from calling it permission, specifically because it started to become very obvious that I was going to create confusion, even immediately, right? Now, I realized that what I was talking about yesterday, I was going to call it permission because it's permission in this context, etc. But the reality is, I'm going to refer to it as a user permission. And as I started to write the code, it dawned on me that the language I was using was incorrect, and that to call it a user permission was probably more accurate. Because a permission is just a thing. So yeah, I clicked on a software job at Iceland on LinkedIn, and their recruiter, who works for Iceland, has just pinged me. Nice. Don't be scared. You can do it. The very worst, you interview. Nothing to be scared of. So we kept Rambling Geek up late last night as well. We were all chatting till stupid o'clock in the morning for the UK. So the user permission created. So what happens is we're going to handle a request from the API. It's going to check if a permission exists. If it doesn't, it's going to create that permission. This create is going to, by virtue of being the static here, it's going to add a domain event for user permission created. So that allows us to expand, like, okay, now here's the user permission. So what I'm doing right now is building out the integration event piece. So I decided I'm going to try and get this done over trying to break up all the stories and being too. No. That's Terry Reedy plus LS. Is it FS or LS? It is LS. I need to come back around and change some things. Yeah, okay, we're good. So add to gateway, produce integration event. This is the stuff I'm working on now, but I'm just going to kind of go through and get this done. If I stop and pause and create pull requests and do all those sorts of things, I'm just going to slow this process down. I'm not going to get as much achieved in the stream, and I'm not sacrificing anything. I've written some unit tests around this piece, by the way, so I have if it doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist, if it permission Oh, if it does not exist, a permission is created and the user permission created domain event is queued. If it does exist, it's not duplicated. We don't try and add it again, right? So publish integration event. So we're just defining the integration event. Right now, integration events are stored in Foundation, which is a core library that is shared across the application stack. So if we want to take this integration event and use it in Control Tower, we can just include this Foundation library. It's completely agnostic of the Liquid Sky stuff, so we've got to be careful. Things don't creep in there. That being said, ultimately, and probably in the next 2 to 3 months, I really do want to go off and do some time, spend some time learning about Kafka's schema versioning and stuff, because I think that's an important aspect of understanding how to go forward with my next level of Kafka usage. I think I use it pretty effectively now, but I think there's a bit more left on the table that I'm needing to do. That would allow us to not have to have a core library. You can just kind of query the topic and pull the schema or query the schema and pull the schema for the object you want, and allow your system to build the object. That way you can control. So with this, if I change this object, the consumer system won't understand that it's different, but it'll still try and pull it out and it will fail. So you have to be careful about changing integration events, because if you change one and there's a downstream problem, you have to make sure those consumers are shut down and restart at the correct time with the right version of the code. Otherwise, they'll try to consume the messages and just fail, and you'll end up with services just failing all over the place. The way I've got it set, it's not going to cause a problem. But if I set it up to consume the message and then move on, I could potentially lose a bunch of messages and never know. So again, it's part of that understanding the limitations that are there now and understanding, okay, it's not a technical debt specifically, but it is a technical understanding that I require to move forward. But yeah, so anyway, that's that. And I apologize. I'm kind of focused. This is I want to get through some of this stuff and get these pieces built out. Primarily because I want to fix some of the bugs that I've identified in the application and get another version released. But we got to get to that point first. So let's go ahead and publish this integration event. So integration event, realistically, all I'm doing here is, so I'm not trying to be smart about my events in the system. I'm not trying to use Kafka as a service bus. I'm trying to use Kafka as a data distribution component, right? So this is organization management, okay? When I update this user permission, and again, we're going to have the GUIDs and stuff coming in, but when I update the user permission, this is going to publish an event that says the user permission was changed. So I would change it from the client side, update it here. This stores that and then publishes this event, this integration event, which is basically just, as we said yesterday, there's like event state-based transfer. So I'm using an event to transfer the current state of this entity. That goes to Kafka, and now any consumer systems can pick it up. If I want to calculate changes on that, I can do. If I want to report on that, I can do. I can pick up that from anywhere. So I'm just publishing this integration event. Now, I am in two minds here as to how to define this entity. Do I publish for a single user permission? Or do I publish the list of permissions currently valid for this user? And I'm thinking it's the latter rather than the former. I think if I change the permission, I just republish the permission set. And that way, any consumer in the system will just be able to take the current set of permissions and wipe out what they have and use this current state. So if for some reason one system fell out of whack, it would just realign itself almost immediately because it would just take the permissions. The downside there is I could get into the world of, okay, well, I don't want to just delete everything and insert everything every time, which would be the quickest, but I want to calculate the differences. Then I put that burden on those client systems. And I'm open. I'd like, if anyone has any ideas on this sort of stuff, I would like to hear any other opinions, genuinely. The alternative is I publish this particular permission and you get this permission, right? So the difference is if I do, we do public class user permission. This is public period identifier, public period tenant. Well, actually, permission, because the period tenant identity, this is not repeated. Right. And then public I enumerable of user permissions, right? So that would look like that. This is because when I capture a user permission, I had to store an identifier for that one, so I can refer to that specific permission configuration again without using tenant and user. Public date time. So this wouldn't need date added now. This would just need the last updated. Right. So if I go that path, then there's one message for every time I change a permission. It publishes every permission for that user. And it's configurable, right? This is part of the thing here is I'm not determining this event. I'm not determining this information when I add the permission. This creating the permission is creating the permission. It's completely independent of what gets published. And so in terms of the events, there's local domain events here that are happening that get consumed. So when I save this information, the domain event gets used to describe the behavior. So I now know when a user permission is created, I should publish the integration event. So I can react to that here and just work on this piece. So if I change it later, it's not going to be a massive impact on the system. But I think I'm going to go with this pattern of, I could have turned off solution-wide analysis, I think. I'm going to go with this pattern of publishing the current set of permissions, which is just an identifier and a permission identifier, to trace that. It's not going to like me because there's a thousand unnecessary warnings. A lot of them are caused by the unit test, by the way, because I used weird naming conventions in my unit tests. So I might have to just go back through them and align to what it thinks I should name them, or figure out how to create rules. So let's go into here. So var, this one is going to get a particular permission. User permission equals repository dot single default. This is going to be user permission by identifier. Entity by identifier spec user permission. That's the default type we have, and this is going to be notification dot user permission identifier. Right. Argument null exception throw if null permission. If we get here and this permission doesn't exist, then something's gone very badly wrong because we've got the integration event for user permission created. So it's perfectly fine to throw an exception here. This should no error out. I will have better error handling around the job. There's a job that runs for these things. I want to put better error handling and management around that. You call it Timmy. Hello. This is C#. How's it going? And now we're going to wait. Then publisher dot publish async. This is going to, what is this going to be? The key is going to be, this is interesting. This is where I need to introduce a new, I need to go back and review how I do keys, because I do want to partition keys by tenant and then thing. So this, the key of this would be the tenant and user ID, but right now it's going to be the user identifier. Permission.user, that needs to be awaited. Get to await your asyncs. Permission.user identifier, that's going to be the key. The event is going to be new permission, user permission integration event. Reference that. And this is the source is going to be name of user permission created. Source being why we've got this event. Then the notification dot source user identifier. This is who did this thing. And then we have our event, and then cancellation token. So we'll get the current permission set, which is going to be repository dot list async, I believe is the right thing to do there. We need a new specification, user permission by user and tenant identifier. I could publish a permission for different tenants. The key ultimately won't matter very much in this right this second, because I'm not going to use that key to do anything. It's just a key, and it will help with keeping the messages going into the same topics, because Kafka will align, it'll hash that key, and it pretty much guarantees that the same, if you partition out the topics, the same partition will take the same message over and over again. That's built in by Kafka so that it can do duplication checking. If you have the Kafka topic set to can't remember the actual name, but it's basically you can only have one message for that type in there at once. With that key in there once. So that's why I'm saying I need to expand how I use the key to not just be a GUID. I need a richer design there so that I can be more expressive in the key and use that for partitioning later on. Because you can assign partitions to brokers and stuff. User permission by user and tenant identifier. Spec. So this is a specification. This saves me from having this saves me from having the queries and stuff in the code directly. So if I build a more complicated link query or a set of includes, etc., I can put these into a spec. I can reuse them, but I can also save on the space a little bit, make it more readable and understandable. This is not a single result, so we're not going to bother there. And Husker, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome in. If you're new to the stream and you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm happy to talk about what I'm doing. Right now, I'm just kind of focused, so forgive me if it's difficult to follow. But if you have any questions about what I'm doing, please feel free. By user, so this is user identifier. Always happy to find another C# streamer. There's more of us. And not doing game dev, but doing app dev. So this is query.where q goes to q dot user identifier equals user identifier and q dot tenant identifier equals tenant identifier. So this will allow me to find all the user permissions for that user and identifier. So go over here, and now we give that a new user permission by user and tenant identifier. Not notification. I need permission dot user identifier and permission dot tenant identifier. The cancellation token. So that gives me the current permission set. And now we can do tenant identifier equals permission dot tenant identifier, user identifier equals permission dot last updated equals permission dot they added actually last updated. Oh, this is created. Let's be specific. We don't need to worry about it. We don't need to overthink it. Permissions equals current permission set dot select p goes to new identifier equals p dot identifier and permission identifier equals p dot permission identifier. Yes, we'll do it there. So why are you complaining now? Oh, because that's user permission. User permission. I should change the user permission. That's why. Okay. So time to start fleshing this out a little bit more. So if you're new here, what I am building is an application for planning, project management and planning. Basically, I've used tools like Jira for well over a decade. You know, it does its job, but there's things I want it to focus on that it doesn't focus on. And one of those things is I want to enrich the mechanism for gathering requirements. I want to help the product management team gather clearer requirements and be able to translate them effectively to software without having to worry about who's reading the thing. So this is the application in its current form. We have planning versus tasks. Tasks is kind of what we would normally deal with as stories, so sprints and stuff end up in tasks. But we have requirements. We can attach a requirement to a planning item. A planning item has a review date, which is a constantly, it's a moving window. So we can say, okay, I want to come back and review this in a week, 2 weeks. So the system is kind of helping prompt review of stuff. This does not mean a backlog. So this is work to be planned or is currently in progress versus, so like this one is in progress versus work that is, sat there in the backlog as an idea, and it looks like we've got a ton of work that we've got lined up, but we don't know what that is. So trying to help filter down what is actual work versus what is things we have ideas for, and allowing the product management team to represent that. So we have requirements. On a requirement, we can add tasks, and tasks are what is actually workable. So I have a sprint here. I'm currently working on creating the API for the set permissions, and I'm doing these things. So right now I've just kind of created a sprint deliberately for this piece of work. Obviously not how it would end up, but yeah. So I'm building that out. I'm working on that. So right this second, what I'm working on is the piece to allow us to set a role or a permission on a specific user. And over the next day or two, what we'll do is, my chair keeps rolling back, so sorry for my fidgeting. What we'll do is get the permissions into the gateway so that when you make a request, it adds in the permissions that user has for that tenant, because Auth0 does not provide any capacity for me to deal with a tenant at their single login level, which is not uncommon. We've been looking at Keycloak, we've been looking at other technologies, and realistically, for right now, to move forward with the application, this is what we're going to do. So, yeah. So if you have any questions, thoughts, or opinions on what I'm doing, you want to dig in, you want to understand more about the technologies, there is a lot of technology in play here. I'm more than happy to talk about it. Coding is nice to do. If you're just finding me and you just want to hang out and code alongside, that's perfectly fine. But I just want to make sure that people understand I am okay to talk about the software as well. Okay, so let's go. I love talking about software. I love writing software, but I think sometimes talking is also just as helpful. If you got pictures. So this is management permissions. We're going to post to this endpoint for a particular tenant and user. We need a grid permission. I did. Do I want? Oh, hold on. Had a I've got one design in my head, and I've just had a thought that here I'm thinking of it as being able to set a permission, right? Because that's what I've been really focused on. Update view, create receiver for user permissions topic, store for user update GraphQL to provide receiver permissions provider, Redis cache, modify. I don't have planning. What I'm thinking about is I don't have when I navigate into the users list, should see a save button enabled when permissions have changed. So what I've done here is I've based my design, my code on what my tasks were without reading the requirements properly, right? Here I'm saying that I don't want to do the save one at once way of doing things, right? Can toggle a permission on or off. So I haven't really tackled on or off there. I've tackled creating a permission, a combination of user, tenant, and permission with a request. But I haven't really tackled the idea of a save button to send up, here's the current permission set, right? So, and I didn't actually create a story, or sorry, the story is the closest alignment. I didn't create a task to represent the UI. Create user profile with receiver permissions. That's on the GraphQL side. Add a security receiver for gateway. That's capturing user permissions in the gateway side. Then the application domain for gateway security, permissions provider, Redis cache, and token builder. So that's to build that. So when we get to we get auth 0 to gateway, so we are a valid user, we then can make the request, build a new request with all the permissions available for us to forward to the actual application, which then has the permissions against the API endpoints. Modify, so we do need, so we just need to replace the internal auth and then add a permission script for the view. It's actually not quite as simple as this. Actually, it kind of is that, but I didn't create anything to think about the UI, the actual behavior here. Create API for setting permissions. So what I didn't do here is I didn't analyze the requirements properly. I didn't read enough of my own requirements, right? This is, again, the lesson here is this is my own requirements and I still misread them. Can toggle permission on off for a user. That's what, right? Should see save button enabled when permissions have changed. So I don't want to do what I was about to start, right? This is not what I need. What I need is this to be enumerable, right? Permission identifiers, right? And I need to take that request in and forward that, which means that this handler now, set user permission, is not correct, right? Because it's a little bit more complicated than that. So, update user permissions. Let's go here. Yeah, that's fine. Concerning permissions. When updating user permissions, and from a unit testing perspective, if you know the style I pick is one I've just evolved to be productive with. That matters more than whether it fits in whatever. But I'm trying to be descriptive here. When updating user permissions, and permissions do not exist. So So this doesn't necessarily change very much, right? Overall, this concept is the same, and that's why I started to rethink this, right? This is no different. So this doesn't change at all. The reason it's going to be triggered is slightly different, and the method is going to be slightly different, right? So I'm going to send up a list of permission identifiers. I'm going to loop through them and identify, do I currently have this or do I not? If I don't have this, add it, and do that diff. Essentially, I'm going to do the diff on that and remove the things that don't apply. But the problem here is it's not necessarily a domain event from those ads and whatnot that matter. It's the fact that I need to publish that the permissions were changed now, right? So whenever that happens, what I tend to do is move this behavior into a domain service so that it's clearer that that's what's going to happen. I don't like doing if a domain event is caused by the entity itself, the entity lives in the domain, that's okay. So the user permission here, this event is triggered from the entity. But if I am going to trigger a domain event myself, right, by adding that, then I don't want to do that as part of the application piece. I want to do it in a domain service. So yeah. So this is user permissions service, right? Need a contract. I'm changing too many things here. This is not exactly ideal, but I'm trying to also be pragmatic about getting this done in a stream. I'd like to be at the point where by the end of this stream, this is able to produce the permissions as events to Kafka, and then I can consume the rest. This is probably going to take me a couple of days to get done. I'm only streaming for a couple of hours a day. I don't get that much more time off stream. I didn't get much more done in the hour or two I had last night and this morning. And again, like this highlights, right? I need to add a task. Screen, this management. Oh, hold on, did I don't think I created some things, but configure permissions for user, tasks, modify components, add permissions, script, create application, add security, create user profile with receiver for permissions. No, I didn't. I definitely didn't do it. Provide user detail panel with on settings screen. When I select a user, I should see a details panel. The list of available permissions should be present, and any permissions currently enabled should be checked. If I change state of any checkbox, save button should enable. Yeah. So this is the task that I'm creating. Um, so which we chat. That's a new screen. Post to API of permissions. Tenant. Let's create that task. We go over here now to planning, to tasks. We go to task. You'll see that that's there. Provide user detail plan, right? Need to set that to ready for development first, and then go to introducing tenant permissions. I'll move that into this sprint, right? And we have that now. Interesting. Oh, it's because it's just loaded. It's not from the server. That's why. Yeah. So we do have that task now created. So that's fine. Okay. So as neat as this is, a set user permission, it does a thing that's great. This isn't necessary to be used because it's for creating a single permission, whereas in reality, I have a group of permissions that I need to enable or disable. So that user permissions are created. So the code for creating user permission is just as valid. I don't mind publishing the domain event. I won't pick up that domain event right now, but at least I publish that domain event and I can use it later on if need be. If not, I can remove it. There's no harm. So here, what I'm going to do is I need to check repository dot received add async arg.is user permission. And yes, this code does not exist. User identifier equals user identifier and p dot user but tenant identifier equals tenant identifier, but with a unit test. If I'm doing TDD, I want to be writing what I expect first and then trying to fill that code in so that I'm able to, only build the code that I need to make this pass. The focus there being about keeping it clean and not writing code you think you need, right? Good or bad, I don't know. Public update user permissions dot handler subject equals null. Public, no, private. Oh, this can be private. I repository of user permission. Repository equals null. Okay, we can do that. That one will do. That one will do. Received twice. I just want to validate that I've received it. Moad, welcome in. Thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. Let's create this private read only GUID. User identifier equals GUID.newGUID. Actually, there's two pieces to this. because the domain, so this is the application piece, right? So I actually don't want to write this. This is valid. But I don't actually want to add them. User permissions, domain service is passed. So I need to pass this forward. I do not need to be doing this. So private I user permissions, domain service, domain service. So we're going to create a mock of that, create this, and we're validating that we're calling that. It's a very simple test, but it means that when the test passed, the system's intact, and that I'm passing the right information forward. So if I transpose some IDs or I do something weird, the behavior, or if I break the API in some way, it will catch that piece. So it might seem kind of dumb, but yeah. Again, my unit testing style is evolved from my preferences, so this is a little unusual. What I do is I have arrange and act methods rather than putting the arrange and act behavior in the facts. So the fact is just focused on the fact. It's not focused on the setup or the configuration or the doing the thing, the execution. It's just focused on here's what happened. And I avoid the word should as much as possible. So in here, we're going to create our subject equals new update user permission. And you'll see why dot handler in a second. We're going to create our domain service equals substitute. This is going to be a mock. This does not need to be an actual instance. And we're going to validate that domain service dot let's come back to that mock in a second when I've got an actual method on it. I haven't used end substitute for doing too much of that. So what we will need is in tests, we'll need a organization management domain.tests, right? So we'll actually have to test that domain service does what it expects, right? That's where if the yeah, so this becomes when updating user permissions. When I talk about not being afraid of your code, this is one of those instances where, yes, I just wrote some code. Is it frustrating that I'm going to have to replace code? Yeah, it is. It's frustrating. This is confused because yeah. But it's better to do this now than oh, it did not like doing that, did it? Let's make sure things compile and then we'll yeah, there we go. It's better to do this now and make sure that the code reads properly than it is to chair. I keep fidgeting because I keep wanting to move up. It's better to do this now and make sure the code tells the right story than it is to try and fit it into what I was doing and commit down a path that isn't helpful. Like adapting that code or cutting the code up and pasting the pieces out. I'd just be better off writing new stuff. Domain user permission service. I just called that user permissions domain service. I user permissions service. It's all within here, so it's fine. It's within the domain. Let's go here. Interface. I user permission service. I'm not dropping the I. This is going to be task result update user permissions for tenant. GUID user identifier. GUID tenant identifier. IEnumerable of GUID permissions and cancellation token. Nice. I'm a big fan of result types. I do like using results, especially where some of these are concerned. Okay, so we don't actually have to implement the actual behavior right this second to get this test to pass, which is kind of what I was relying on there. So we can do that. We can then go into here and start to flesh this out a little bit. So this isn't going to look much different. So I just talked about not copying and pasting, but we're going to copy and paste some. So there's always, so the way that I write these things is actually a recommendation of Jimmy Bogard with his mediator library. Is basically, I'm going to have a command and handler all the time. Rather than create two classes, one for the command, one for the handler, as actual files every single time, I create something that represents the thing I'm doing, and there happens to be a command and handler under that. So essentially using the top level class as a namespace, it just keeps it a little bit cleaner, and you don't end up with multiple files. You can know, okay, this is the thing I'm doing, right? Permissions, update user permission. That's what I'm dealing with. So command from user. The only difference here is this is an IEnumerable of GUID permissions identifiers. And to be accurate on this one, I should. That's more accurate. It's not a permission. It's not a representation. It's an identifier. So when we go back here now, we create a handler, public class handler, I command handler of command, and then result GUID. That's going to give, what's it going to give? That's going, no, that just needs a result. We can't do that here. There we go. That's enough for that. I don't know why Windows input got referenced. Oh, command. So now this test, so we want to do domain service dot arg dot is to g equals use identifier arg dot is g goes to, oh, it's not recognizing that, is it? Don't know if that'll work. Let's do private read only GUID permission identifiers equals, that's going to be an array. Um, Annie, Hello, TBG. The rest of you awesome people there. Whereas with you and the bugs are rarely maybe legendary. Oh wait, that's not how that was. How's things? Good to see you. Mission identified. I don't know if that will actually do the right thing, but arg that any cancellation token um, received. Okay, so that should validate that the main service called that, and then the act would be subject.handle, and then we do new update user permissions dot command. This would be the command tenant user permissions. Cancellation token dot none. We don't want to mess around with async inside of unit test. It's fine. This structure isn't set to deal with the asynchronous behavior, so it won't. And then source user identifier. Private read only grid source user identifier equals grid.new grid. So we're gonna have that, and then that should build this one. Return typed results bad requests. Then that's a reference to something, so we can just comment that out for right a second. We're not calling it. I just wanted to build. Again, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, please feel free. Don't worry about diverting. I'm happy to talk about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and if you disagree with what I'm doing, if you think it should be done a different way, if you think I'm not doing it the best way, I'd love to hear. I'm always open to improving and trying to learn and change my ways if my ways don't fit. I'm happy to adapt. I have the same mud as last year. Everything works on my machine, but in the cluster, it behaves like a quantum wave when you watch it works. Otherwise, it can't reach service. Progress is good. I don't know if you've seen, we got the planning. We actually got the app running in Pulumi, using Pulumi. So the Kubernetes box is running fine and has been on for many weeks now. For a little AMD machine, that's pretty impressive. And I'm actually using the app to plan the app. Disagree just for the sake of disagreement. So for reference, I'm not tackling this out of some level of naivety. I've been a software developer for many years. I'm doing this because I want to do this. I want to build this. I'm stretching my legs essentially with this application. From a code perspective, it implements some things that I've been wanting to play with for many years. I am, again, the system is distributed, heavily distributed. It's very CQRS is 100% embraced. In that I am the command and the query side of things are completely independent. There's all the APIs focused on their specific focus. They do not have extra data. So none of these these are all independent databases as well. None of these databases have anything but the data they care about. And then they publish their integration data to the rest of the system to be picked up for checking for changes and enriching that data, and also the view. So there's a GraphQL view over here. This is an Angular client, and right now I'm working on this piece here. You really forced me to make a design for it. It hurts in the eyes. Again, UI UX, not my specialty, and I don't want to spend a great deal of time focused on that at this point. The features matter more, and yes, UI UX can drive some features, but the code can change later. If the features are vastly different when a UI UX pass goes, but I'm not that expert, and I will save my pennies and try and hire someone as we get closer to it becoming more product worthy, and then you'll see what happens to an application when you do a pass of it and make it look professional. But I'm looking at many thousands of dollars for that piece, and I would have to be convinced that this will become a product before I even spend that money. So let's run these unit tests. This will fail, right? It will fail. Does it fail for the right reason? Not implemented. So let's make it pass. So we need to inject an user permissions service, right? Now, yes, this is just a pass through, but I don't want to inject that domain service directly into my handler. If I'm going to do something, I can also prepare data here. I can gather extra information that's necessary in the application layer and then pass it forward into the domain service. As it stands right now, I'm literally just going to pass this through. Async return await service dot update user permissions for tenant. But this means that the domain is kind of managed in the domain piece, and the application layer is just invoking a command still. It doesn't matter what it's doing. It doesn't care about the implementation. Yeah. And I know I flipped these, but I'm expressing it slightly differently here. Here I'm updating permissions, so the data, the tenant, the user, etc. don't matter. But when I'm calling this one, I'm actually expressing I'm gonna need that information. I think I'm going to care about who's doing this. So I probably should pass that in. Grid source user identifier. That's commonly how I refer to it throughout the application. The source user identifier is the user who's doing this thing, right? So I'll refer to it quite commonly as source user identifier. Consistency, that matters more than anything else, right? I can read this code, I can understand, and I can refer to someone else and say, oh, change the source user identifier, or we're not capturing the source user identifier, and anyone working in the code will know what that means. And that's the key goal there. Okay, so arg.is source user identifier. Again, I'm just validating that these arguments are passed correctly. Here, that should now run. No, it shouldn't, because I'm not passing in domain service. There you go. There you go. So that passes. So sadly, these tests, yeah, great, awesome. Bye. This code, yeah, it did it what it did, but it's gone. Bye. Right. We don't need it. So now let's implement that piece, right? So when updating permissions, actually, let's do a folder for this one because this might be a bit bigger. Concerning the user permissions when permissions do not exist, that permissions are created that permissions updated domain event is triggered. Our subject in this case is our service, an actual implementation of our service, not the interface. So user permissions service is our subject, our system under test, however you want to term it. Is it, did I call it the one? User permissions service. Must be that one. Arrange act. If you do, again, if you have questions, if you are looking at this and you would like me to go more into the concepts or the technology stack, etc., you're more than welcome to ask. There is a Discord that you're more than welcome to join as well if you want to ask things. Sometimes we do talk offline. We get in chats a couple of times a week, here and there, and generally talk about software. More than welcome to join. Yes, I know there's warnings. I'm going to do a warning pass later. They're all the same sort of warning, although it is growing the more projects I add because of my styles. It doesn't like my naming, right? I need to turn off some of these configurations and then those warnings will drop massively because mainly it's I do not like having that style, the when permissions do not exist. I like this because it reads, and you can actually in the testing, when updating user permissions, domain services, it reads correctly. Using the other style, the Pascal condensed, I just don't feel it reads very easily. So we argue a lot. There we go. Arrange act. Subject dot. Right, because the service is not implementing the interface yet. User permission service. Let's implement it finally. And then let's go to does not exist, and then subject dot update user permissions for tenant. Now we need to pass in. I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm just going to copy this chunk of variables just to save me a little bit of typing. So this is user, tenant, permissions, source user, and cancellation token dot none. Right. Okay. So we have update user permissions. Let's go, and what we should be doing is we need a repository. So private I repository of user permission repository. Yeah. And then repository dot received. Dot I need to come back around and look at using the unified NuGet packages because right now I do have a discrepancy. And yeah. Yeah, how to do that. If you like, if you enjoy software development, um, in general, Canny is, um, Canny builds lots of cool stuff. Builds a library for Godot. It primarily does game stuff, but the stuff that I don't know. I don't like describing you as a game developer, kind of, because yes, you do game development, but you also build so much more. And then Twitcher, which is an entire library built for Godot or Twitch integration, which is full featured. Hi Jay, how you doing? Um, you know, yeah, Twitcher, the Twitcher library is you need to check it. If you do any Godot stuff, you want to do interaction with your stream, yeah, Kenny's technology is amazing, and he does focus very much so on the cleanliness of the design, um, and it's a fun place to hang out. Okay, so let's get the repository in place. So let's do our repository is a substitute for the iRepository view permissions. Um, then permissions updated domain event is triggered. How am I going to do that? We're going to need an event publisher. In this case, private I event publisher. Event publisher. That's going to be another substitute event publisher. That, and then we're going to do event publisher dot received dot publish async arg dot is permissions updated. Did I call it event? No, user permissions updated. User permissions updated. Yeah, I'll do. Um, Actually, that's all I need. The user and the tenant. So we need an event for user permissions updated. User permissions updated. So the events here, these events are domain events. These are not published to the entire system. So the design here is very much the application piece does its thing. It publishes a domain event which is processed internally, normally in response to data changing in the database. So domain events are added when you change the entity and then published through the event publisher when we commit to the repository or to commit to the database. So they help describe that. So you can build behaviors off of events rather than having, so from a single responsibility perspective, if I want to do things in response to user permissions changing, I don't have to do that in here. I can do that in another handler that understands, oh, the user permissions are updated. I need to do something else, whether I want to log it, whether I want to trace it, whether I want to do all sorts of other stuff. I can do that, and I don't have to make it part of this. I can actually hook it into the notifications piece and process that offline. So, yeah. You have lots of ideas. So this is going to look similar, right? So it's a domain event, which has a default source user identifier. So the idea being that I can track who's doing this down the line. GUID tenant identifier, right? So in this case, I want to pull for the user and tenant because I am not permissions updated. I think I call it user permissions updated, right? Yeah. And we're going to continue working on developers.stream, right? So tomorrow's stream will be not Liquid Sky focused. It will be developers.stream focused, and we'll start to stub out the actual code base there and get that in place to start building forward on that one. So, yeah, hopefully that's an interesting idea to people. But I do want to help promote other developers who stream. Okay, user permissions updated. Publish async. Oh, no. Arg dot. Oh no, it's not event publisher. That's not an event publisher. Event publisher is the bigger piece of the system. That's not event publisher. What is this? This is a is it a domain event publisher? Brain. Come on. So Foundation, again, Foundation is a library that is all the shared kernel pieces. It is a separate repo. That way it can be shared between the Control Tower and Liquid Sky projects. Control Tower is the backend management system being built for Liquid Sky. So it can manage things like subscriptions and, in the long term, payment and all those sorts of things would go through Control Tower, not through Liquid Sky. Interceptors. The main event publishing integration takes an iNotification publisher. There we go. That's what I did. Should have known that. That's just because I've not really worked in the code for long enough. For long, I actually have essentially not done any active Liquid Sky development in over a month because of Pulumi and stuff. I think I started that in November, and with the holidays and stuff. So I am rusty. Publisher equals null. Publisher equals that. Now this publisher, yeah, has the concept. There is a concept in here of an outbox. There's actually a library you can get by going to, if you are interested in Kafka and these pieces, you can actually get this piece. So Mediator has the concept of not only command and query, it has a concept of a notification. A notification is a broadcast of, things to pick it up. So what I do is I'll lean into that a little bit. And when you save something to the database normally, I have a notification publisher, and that will publish that event into the domain, and the subscribers to that event, the notification handlers, will pick that event up and run with it. So I'm leaning into that mediator thing. The only difference is with this notification publisher is this actually implements an outbox. So the actual processing of those notifications is actually asynchronous. So all the other commits have happened. Now these get processed independently. So a failure in here doesn't roll back everything because it's a notification, right? It's telling the rest of the system to do things. So the first priority is storing the data that you need to store. The rest of the system being out of whack is another problem. So that's my focus right this second. It's not an easy concept to play with, but it's yeah. So Mediator Outbox is the implementation that I built for the Mediator library that gives you the ability to do an outbox pattern for Mediator. Introduces the notification thing. Also, two of the libraries that I have built. This one is the one I'm using the most of. Kafka extensions library. So this is it wraps the Confluent Kafka library and um, provides me the ability to set up an outbox to configure. So it supports right now MongoDB and SQL Server outboxes. It also so in a similar pattern to the mediator one. So the general design is you have a notification publisher, right, which publishes local notifications. So domain events can be configured, and there are a few areas where we use those to kind of chain together behavior. But then the event publisher, the Kafka piece, publishes to the wider system. So domain events happen within here, and then integration events get published out here, and Kafka listens to them. So the Kafka extensions library introduces the outbox. It provides it's not a very robust version right this second. There's some scale out pieces that need to be worked on, but it is being used and work. So I suppose from a robustness perspective, it is working fully for Liquid Sky and reliably. And also it does have the ability to store the configuration for your topics in console. So I actually store my Kafka configuration, the event type with the topic name, so that when you start up, you can just say, okay, I want to subscribe to these events. You don't have to mess around with the topic name. It pulls it all from configuration based upon your events. This would change if we're using schema. So that's one of the things that I don't want to just introduce. And yeah, this essentially looks like this, where I say, okay, integration dot. Well, we know we just added another event in here, so let's just add it. User permission integration event. Actually, we're going to change that to user permissions integration event, right? And that's going to be organization.user.permissions. I'm going to try and get away from the hyphen. It doesn't like that. You do get warnings from Kafka. Don't mix periods and hyphens. So Liquid Sky organization, that's the grouping user.permissions. Okay, so we're good with that. And let's just change that to user permissions integration event right now. We then need to go and do, so I've validated, here's what I expect to happen. Again, I'm only dealing with the do not exist right now. So I'm not going to write anything too advanced. We're just going to write the bare minimum for that piece. When I was talking about the notification subscriptions before, you see in the application here, I have subscribers, user permission created. This is going to change to user permissions updated. Refactor this, adjust namespaces there. We're going to change this to be user permissions. I'm just going to do this now so I don't forget it. Permissions updated notification. So I'm differentiating that because I've used the folder name, which means that the namespace conflicts. So I'm just making sure I specify notifications there. And then this is user permissions updated. Right. So this still matters. That user permissions updated notification is user permissions updated. Oh, that should be user identifier. Junicus, thank you very much for the 1,000 bits. Thank you. Happy New Year. User permissions updated. We'll worry about that afterwards. That's fine. That's fine. So then that becomes notification user identifier. notification, notification, and then this is last updated. Let's go with datetime.utc now, right? For right a second. I mean, yeah, I'm drinking these. How's things? How was your holidays? Okay, so I know I'm going a bit out of order here. I'm jumping around a little bit, so please forgive me if it doesn't make much sense. But basically, I just wanted to make sure that integration event's dealt with because there's very little change. Because essentially, this still matters. This is still valid because the permissions are going to get entered in the same way. I'm going to go and get the list of the current permissions and then publish them, right? So the last update it is now. That's fine. Oh, you're one of those that unfortunately got struck down by that. Sorry to hear that. Okay, so update user permissions will call the service. The service now needs to do the thing it's saying it'll do. So if we try and run this unit test, it's going to fail. Yes. Which is fine. That's exactly what we intend. We don't want to write. Again, we're kind of laying out the expectation before we write the code so that we make the code meet the expectation and nothing else. So we go to user permission service, update user permissions for tenant. We need to loop through the permissions and insert them for that. So we need a repository of user permission, repository. Right, that's all we need right this second. Then for each var permission identifier. Yeah, let's do that. Let's whack async on there. So if you remember, we have a static. Hey, Gilmash, how you doing? Do we use Claude? Yes, intermittently. We've been experimenting a little bit here and there with using ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini to ask questions and stuff. .create, and then that takes tenant identifier, user identifier, and permission identifier, and then source user identifier. The reason being that has its own event that we will leave in place. I was about to buy a subscription, that's why I asked. I pay for ChatGPT. I pay the $20 a month for ChatGPT. I'm going to cancel that. I keep thinking to cancel it because I don't really use it enough to warrant that. We did ask. We did. Claude seems to give slightly different answers. Mojo seems to like Claude. Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know if I'm using them a lot. So yeah, so let's interject the repository there. So we need to just do the get away to get token on that. Just to, I think you do get result, but get away to get result. That's just to force the async stuff out. Because all I need to do is invoke the method, right? Let's run the unit test. Do we get at least the first part? Oh no. Return result.success. Yeah, I don't think we've used it extensively enough. Again, like I said, we've used it to compare asking questions about permissions and see how it comes up with different things, and you know, in some respects, Claude came out with more directions, but it suffers the same thing, right? Because I'm asking about technologies that are very current, Angular 18, um, all their data sources haven't been updated, so they're giving mixed answers. Claude did give one of the most descriptive ones, I will say. Whereas ChatGPT gave general answers, and Gemini was no, Gemini was give the most general answer, and ChatGPT and gave a little bit more, but Claude added a little bit more detail to even that. And I like the code design down the side in Claude. It gives you the actual code down the side rather than just stuffing it in the content of the chat. Okay, so our first test passes. We have validated that permissions are created. I think if I do that, will that run? That'll verify that I run it. That I did 2 inserts. Yeah, it's not the greatest of tests because if the same one happens, then you're fine. It won't validate the distinct. But I'm not going to dig deep into that right this second because that's not what I want to be streaming about. Again, I'm trying to move this forward. The publisher now, we need to validate the publisher. So let's go into here. And when we've done this, we now need to say iNotification, publisher, publisher dot publish, new user permissions updated, user identifier, tenant identifier, source user identifier, cancellation token. We go back over here now, and we need to insert that publisher. There we go. There's our passing test. Notice I'm also not committing very often here. That's not really clever of me, but I'm trying to move forward. In reality, if I was doing this as a story, as a task independently, then the commits would be much more frequent. But again, if I start to commit and stuff every 5 seconds, then that's going to be a workflow that is going to be a little bit difficult for me to stream about. So that's a simple case. When permission exists, and is no longer set. How do I describe that? So when permission is removed, let's go with that one. So the code here, for the sake of moving this forward, yeah, Insomnia will be the tool I use the most for APIs. I haven't been playing with too much of the API side recently, though. With Liquid Sky, because I'm using GraphQL primarily for the data, I've been using what was formerly Banana Cake Pop. It is now some techie sounding name. Best check. Ooh. Good day, Mr. Jones. Hope you're well. So let's add these in again. Morning. Um, this is going to be permission is removed. So we're going to comment that out in a second. We do want to fire this again. We want to validate that permission was triggered. I'm not going to stress this right this second. Realistically, what I should do to validate it effectively, I want to validate that it sends the permissions I'm expecting. So I really do need to be a little bit more detailed on this. The way I'm thinking about the unit testing right now is if I've got the bare minimum of unit testing as a structure in place, the code is generally unit tested. Even if it's wrong, if I find a bug later on, I can add the unit test to cover that. And it's not going to be, oh no, it's not unit testable. Oh no, it's not in place. I can add that later. But if I spend a great deal of time just trying to set up unit tests and write unit tests all the time, I'm not moving the application forward on stream. And I'm trying to balance that, realistic software development with like, okay, the things that are just going to make people's eyes glaze over because they don't follow. And I'd rather get to stuff that might be of interest to people. But if you ever want to know more, if you want to dig into this more, you're more than welcome to use the Discord and have a chat. Okay. So what we need to do here is there's going to be existing permission that needs to be removed, right? So this one comes in and we have private read-only GUID existing permission equals, so we need private read-only GUID existing permission identifier. The rest doesn't matter. We then need to do the day you were doing Pulumi to set up the Kubernetes thing, right? Yep. Yep, Pulumi now. So there is an entire recent manage projects. Suppose Pulumi isn't. Yeah. So there's an entire configuration for Pulumi to bring up the application stack. And we also figured out data retention and all sorts on services. Not the happiest period. it's not what I like doing, that's for certain. I definitely learned that part. So this permission identifier is not going to align to this permission identifier, right? So that's what I'm going to set up when I arrange this in a second. So repository dot nice. Okay, and I imagine you were always running that QA test environment update as you finish new features. Not right this second. Right this second, I'm using it as because I want to allow people to tinker with it. So for right now, if you're a subscriber, you are more than welcome to sign up to use Liquid Sky and tinker with it. So because I'm doing that, that is going to right now be on push to main. It will produce all the new images and I can push them. Eventually, I do want to figure out what it means for a test environment and QA, etc. But I don't have the resources to run that right this second. Well, the power in this room to run that, to be honest. Yeah. So right now the configuration is set I moved it once I got this. No, no, it's not a QA environment. Because again, we don't have that sort of structure right this second. But the same thing, I could use the exact. Eventually, yes, it will be, because that Pulumi instance is set up to do Kafka, SQL Server, etc. Whereas in reality, I don't want Kafka and SQL Server hosted in that box. They should be independent of that box. Basically, just have ingress rules configured. Yeah, so it's probably more akin to what QA would be for certain. I was just using it. So I have workflows. Um, Now I've modified this. So these workflows basically on push to main. It will make sure that the unit tests are completed. And then when they happen, it will run the build. So this will actually only run if there's changes to this piece in that commit. So when the main branch gets pushed to, it will determine which pieces need to change and build the images for them after running unit tests. Is the intent. But ultimately, yeah, a QA environment would be there. Hey, Mr. Horn, how you doing? Happy New Year. Still saying that this week because I haven't seen it yet. How was your holidays? Oh, another one. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Where are you hosting your containers? Are you running your own container registry or using the GitHub one? I am actually paying for Docker Hub to push the container images. So um, after the fact, I did learn a little bit more about using the GitHub ones. Because if you have a private repo, you get a private registry anyway. Um, but it was messy to deal with talking to that. Um, from Pulumi from the Kubernetes deployment. So I ended up just using Docker Hub, and so I just paid for Docker, $5 a month for Docker Hub. Yeah, yeah. GitHub. If you have a private repository, you get a private registry aligned with it. It was only because I just didn't want to spend more time faffing around with figuring out how to get access to the GitHub registry, because it was hard enough getting it set up. And I had more Docker examples available to me. So I was like, I'm going to spend $5 a month and get Docker Hub. Yeah. Yeah. It's really not obvious though. That's the weird thing, that they do that for you. Okay. List async. So this is going to be arg is any um, user um, user permissions. Is it that one? No, it's not that one. Any, what's the specification? User permission. That should be user permissions, not user permission. There you go. Bit of a refactor in there. And tenant identifier. There you go. I use GitHub for everything. It's pretty nice. Once you get how permissions work for the registry, it's easy to set up. Images is also fully free. Pay for packages and such after 5 gig. Nice. Yeah, like I said, I would probably switch over, because having Docker Hub, yeah. But basically, how do I do it? Infrastructure configuration. Where is it? Utility. Yeah, I ended up with having to build this weird uh, image pull secret stuff, and I couldn't figure out how to get it to work with GitHub properly. So I had an example, so I just used that. Thinking of writing a tool for the office, and I think I'll use the Git registry if the image is not that big. I really doubt they will be. Nice. So when you're doing when working with specifications, this is the one thing I can't do. This specification, you can't validate the parameters because it's constructed in line, and it doesn't. Short of what I could do is expose these parameters publicly, but then it's like changing it for the purpose of the test. So I'm still deciding how I want to handle that piece. So I'm just saying any user permission is going to do returns new list of user permissions, and this is going to be object builder dot build entity user permission, and this is going to be new, and this is going to be identifier equals GUID.new GUID, tenant identifier, user identifier, permission identifier. Nice, it knows what I mean. So object builder is just a class that I have built that uses reflection to take a class that has static constructor, a private constructor, and allows me to still build an entity of it for using testing. And capture the parameters. Not here that I know of. Maybe there's a way, but yeah. Object builder, not the same object builder like in Microsoft Enterprise Block. I don't know. I've never used Enterprise Block. I luckily avoided working in organizations at that time. But it builds an instance of that class, and then sets the parameters and provides it any of these that it identifies as needing for the constructor. It will pass them in to the method. Hosting your own server costs about $10 to $20 a month. You can install everything. Another cloud way of doing things, but you have technically endless space. Oh, I don't know where you're looking for 10 to. I don't think I could host this for $10 to $20 a month. Okay, so we're going to configure that. That gives us our existing permissions. So we expect the domain event to trigger. Again, I'm not testing the permissions that are in there. I'm just saying that it should publish. Again, I could say and a dot a dot permission user permissions updated. Oh no, that's good enough. User, I want user on there though. A dot user identifier equals user identifier and yeah, that's actually fine because it's just triggering the main event. It doesn't actually trigger here's what the events are. So it actually isn't any more complicated than that. What we do want to see is that this one should be removed. So, or the existing one should be removed. So we want to see received remove. Is it remove? Or is it delete async? Yeah, delete async. Arg is user permission. And a dot permission identifier equals existing permission identifier. Right. So we want to see that. That permission is, let's make this simpler. When permission is removed, we still want to publish that it's empty because the rest of the system, yeah. The deployment structure should work easily. Have GitLab with a database self-hosted running the application could be another thing, but even then, start small until you need scale. Well, small went out the window about 10 months ago for this. He had a very interesting component in it called Object Builder, which was a dependency injection container, but it was very flexible and modular. Huh. Yeah, I'm not dealing with the dependency injection in there. Performance sucked though. Use the Object Builder in many projects. The other parts of the enterprise block, I didn't understand. Yeah. You know, in some respects, looking back, there was a big period of time where there was a lot of technology that was kind of cookie cutted. And the way was to have people dictate how code should be. Like I've seen it in several products where people kind of built out a framework that you should build the software in, and now we're kind of left to our own devices, and we end up with a million different ways of doing the same thing, and then we just slap another label on it and call it something different. Yeah. The enterprise library was kind of an interesting. Here's all common stuff. Let's just use this. Oh, yeah. Okay, so what we're expecting here is we should see a delete, and we should still see this publish, and that's what we're documenting in the test. So if we run this, it should fail because no add. Well, it should still pass the second test because there's no ads, right? So we're still doing this all the time, but we didn't remove the permission. So our service now needs to do var existing permissions equals await. Yep, that's fine. User permissions. The idea is not bad. Common patterns, common solutions. Yeah, but I think it's just not. I don't know if I think software development. If you're building an application, I don't think it's necessarily cookie cutter. Take this piece, move this piece, and like use this piece in here all the time. I think once you get in a pattern, like here I've got a rhythm and I've got a style that I'm following. I think it's more, you know, and I do have areas where the same code is repeated. There was a lot in Enterprise Library. I do remember seeing parts of it and just being baffled because the common problem was it adapted it adopted, sorry, not adapted, it adopted the naming of the enterprise library because it was a copy in there and didn't describe the business. So it described the pattern more than the business. And I'm of the favor of describing what you're doing in the business parlance over anything else. Okay, so the problem here is I have a specification in here, but not in here, but domain cannot reference application because that's a bad direction. Application can reference domain, domain cannot reference application. So do these specifications move into domain? I think they do. Morning, Mars. How you doing? Okay, so let's do that. So existing permissions. Another day in paradise. Nice, nice. Well, actually, so let's see if we can finish this up really quick. I'm going to snooze the ads for a few minutes. Have you thought about adding architecture tests to this since you show so many projects? Yes, I have. It is definitely on my list of I want to do. I think that will become ever more important as, I have asked a few people to assist with this now. And I think that will help them in that once we get up to speed and things moving along, if they're contributing, actively contributing, then there is more risk of divergence. So yeah. Well, I'm the only one. I can kind of flip flop, decide, and I am a big fan of not committing 100% to the way it's working. Being happy to change it. Again, don't be scared of your code is a big piece for me. I should not be afraid to change what I have done or what I'm doing. So this should become where ID existing permissions does not exist. Right. So that should only take permissions that are not set. And then for each var existing permission, that doesn't, that's a collection, so that's got contains, whereas this is a list. And that's fine. I don't mind multiple enumeration here. For existing permission in existing permissions where the incoming ones don't contain it, let's delete it. That should do for now. We succeeded on the delete. We then broke the do not exist, right? when updating user permissions do not exist, we received that we don't have existing received if existing permissions dot any. Interesting, that isn't complaining about that, but let's find out. Compare count. It just reads better. Any just reads better. Okay. Let's do that once more. And then we'll actually read the error. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. Line 24. Oh, it's because of that. So let's do it this way. Let's move this around a little bit to make readability. Permission equals, so filter permission identifiers where they're not in the existing permissions. Why do you not like that? Line 23. Hold on, that's null. It would be nullable. So existing permissions is not null. And come on. How do you want to change? Remove expression. Okay. You're saying that's not brushing. Object reference not set to an instance. Yeah, that returns a list. So, oh, I know why. I know why. Because I'm still doing the call, right? Return an empty list, which is what the API would do anyway. I'm not adding any weird behavior there. There you go. Okay. So it will deal with removing the permissions. It will deal with adding new permissions. It will do the difference. It will not do anything clever right this second. I need to write a test to say when I've got a new permission and I'm removing a permission that it deals with both scenarios, just to validate that it will actually correctly piece those together. And then we should be able to move forward. So the next steps for me are to get this hooked up to the API. So that the API will be literally just passing this list of GUIDs in there, and then start to work on the UI. So we'll begin that. I'll begin that over the weekend and get that in place. So tomorrow we're going to be working on Liquid. We're going to be working on developers.stream. We'll start the build out of that, the structuring of that. So if you are interested in the discussion around that, any debate on UI, UX, UI framework to be had, I do believe I'm going to put Blazor on that one as it stands right now, but we'll build a .NET API to do the backend pieces. And yeah, yeah, more than welcome to come and join for that one. And then, so Mondays and Fridays for now, I'm going to make about developers.stream for a few months, just to try and get that project up and running. Or I'll say a few months, probably a few weeks, review that to see if people are interested in picking up, because I don't want to make that just me developing on stream. If people are interested, they should be able to do it. Don't forget, it's Friday. One Lion is another .NET developer here on Twitch. He streams his day-to-day work on Mondays and Wednesdays, but on Fridays he hosts a community day stream. Oh, today's Thursday. Why is it not Friday? Oh, why did I have it in my head that it was Friday? He does that tomorrow. I really thought it was Friday, so now I'm really upset. So, and embarrassed, but never mind, that's fine. It's Thursday. But anyway, One Line does stream .NET stuff. Very worth checking out, and a very big supporter, and helped me a lot with the shout outs for other streamers. So most depressed. I really wanted it to be Friday. That shows how my week's gone, right? So anyway, today we're gonna go raid. Not repository, arg token. We're gonna go over to White Panther. White Panther's currently doing trying to code with the voice, so it will create funny scenarios. But yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. We will work on developers at stream tomorrow. That's why my brain was getting all thrown out, because I'm talking about doing something different. And I talked about doing this over the weekend. I will continue working on this, get this into place. So by Tuesday, again, my hope is to be demonstrating the ability to set permissions on a user and then allow login. Once we get these pieces in place and we get some of these pieces tightened up, then I'll do another deployment to the Kubernetes box, and then there's more to play with for other people and to validate. If you're a subscriber to the stream, you are more than welcome to check out Liquid Sky. There's a Discord channel that's available to the subscribers. If you want to provide feedback or anything like that, you're more than welcome to. I would be interested in any ideas or thoughts you have on what is there. So you're more than welcome. And if you need any help, let me know. The Discord is always there. But anyway, let's go raid White Panther. I will see you again tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. See you soon. Bye. It's not Friday.